Allow me to introduce myself. I am Claire. I am 49 years of age. Throughout much of my adult life, I have been recognized primarily as Professor Langley's wife. That's merely an observation, not a grievance. My husband, Peter Langley, is a literature professor at the university. He possesses a remarkable intellect and an air of calm, effortlessly weaving Yeats into everyday dialogue, while still favoring the elegance of a fountain pen for his writing. He is held in high regard by the students. He commands the respect of his colleagues. And I slipped quietly into the shadows of his lectures long ago. We once engaged in conversations about literature, concerning aspirations, on the ways we could transform the world through the power of our thoughts and expressions. Yet, that feels like an eternity past. Before the faculty dinner settled into a familiar rhythm, before his sabbaticals transformed into serene, self-indulgent retreats, before our marriage started to resemble a story with an ending already penned, though neither of us possessed the courage to turn the last page. I was employed in the development office of the university, identical grounds yet a universe apart. I would acknowledge students who greeted me with a courteous wave, unaware of my identity. With the exception of the select few who would grace our home for dinner, Peter's cherished students. Radiant, eloquent, driven. All eyes were fixed on Peter, as if he possessed the very keys to their deepest aspirations. Yet one among them gazed at me in a way that felt distinct. He was known as Julian Rivera, 23, senior on the brink of graduation, lofty, adorned with dark curls that perpetually appeared to be a mere breeze away from disorder. His voice was smooth yet rough, reminiscent of honey drizzled over stones, and his eyes didn't merely look, they scrutinized with intent. He held the esteemed position of being Peter's favorite student. He created an atmosphere where I felt as though I was the sole focus of attention in that space. It was during one of our department dinners that I first became aware of it. As I meticulously arranged the wine glasses, I took a moment to check on the roast simmering in the oven. Peter sat in the study, diligently revising his lecture notes as he often did. Julian showed up ahead of time, assisted in bringing in the drinks, engaged in light conversation with me in the kitchen. I recall him leaning against the counter, his gaze unwavering as it met mine, and he remarked, "I often ponder what sort of individual finds themselves with someone like Professor Langley." A chuckle escaped me. "Are you suggesting dull and studious?" "No," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "I mean someone capable of matching his profoundness." A moment of silence lingered in the air. Not unsuitable, yet electrified. The remainder of the evening unfolded in a haze of scholarly discussions, the gentle clinking of wine glasses, and the soft echoes of piano jazz in the background. Yet each time I moved past Julian to refill a glass or deliver dessert, I sensed his gaze, gentle, inquisitive, and lingering just a heartbeat longer than necessary. I attempted to dismiss it casually. He was merely exercising common courtesy. Delightful. Perceptive. Yet, in the stillness of that night, as I scrubbed the dishes long after the guests had departed, a smile crept onto my face for no apparent reason. For the first time in years, I sensed that I was a woman who had captured someone's attention. Peter entered the kitchen, placing a kiss on my cheek without a glance. "Dinner was fine," he muttered, his attention drifting as he thumbed through the pages of a book. I remained silent. I found myself preoccupied with thoughts of whether Julian would return, and what it signified that I held on to the hope he would. Julian started to visit with increasing regularity. Peter mentioned that it was intended for guidance. Julian was in the process of applying to graduate schools, requiring recommendation letters and seeking feedback on his essays. I accepted it without a word on the surface. Yet I observed certain details. Just as Julian consistently made his entrance a tad ahead of schedule, he would bring pastries or coffee, leaving one for me, even when I was merely passing through the room. On a Thursday afternoon, I found myself lingering in the kitchen, savoring the moment a bit longer than I typically would. In the study, they engaged in a conversation about Nabokov or Borges, or perhaps something just as intellectually stimulating. I found myself feigning the act of cleaning a counter that was already spotless, and I listened as he spoke. "There's something unique about her, wouldn't you agree?" A moment of silence lingered in the air. "Who?" Peter inquired. Julian responded, "Your wife." Peter let out a soft chuckle, the kind that was both precise and tinged with intellect. I suppose Claire has consistently embodied elegance. He then continued on his way, returning to the framework of the narrative, returning to the art of storytelling. Yet I found myself momentarily breathless, for that was not the echo of reverence. It was a chasm of separation, and I came to a profound realization I had long evaded. Peter no longer saw me. It had been quite some time since he last did. Yet Julian did. That weekend, Peter attended a conference in Seattle, merely a pair of nights. He pressed his lips to mine in farewell, his thoughts already soaring towards the journey ahead. As the door clicked shut behind him, an unmistakable shift enveloped the house. More serene, yet brimming with vitality. On a Saturday morning, I found myself in the backyard garden. I donned a sundress, a gentle blue cotton fabric, featuring a low back and cinched at the waist. Exclusively for oneself, merely for the gentle wind, exclusively for my enjoyment. Or perhaps, a fragment of my being yearned for someone to notice. At the stroke of noon, the doorbell chimed. Julian, clutching a humble brown paper bag. I brought the cheese pastries you enjoy. I blinked. How did you? You brought them up once. Couple of weeks back. He recalled. We gathered around the patio table. A warm cup of coffee. Delicacies. Casual banter to start things off. Yet it changed in an instant. He posed inquiries that Peter had long since abandoned, the music that captured my interest. Though I still penned verses, I did so in silence, keeping it a secret for years. If I were happy, the final question lingered, suspended in the atmosphere. My gaze fell upon him, truly examined. His jaw clenched, his fingers gently wrapped around the warm coffee mug. I replied, on certain days. He inclined his head with deliberation. Then his voice, now a gentle whisper. Sometimes I believe that individuals like you are destined to be witnessed by someone capable of bearing the depth of your presence. My heart faltered, as if it had not braced itself for such raw candor. I hadn't fully grasped how much I needed to hear those words. I turned my gaze aside. In that moment I sensed it. His eyes held a captivating intensity, not assertive, free from desire, yet filled with awe. I felt as though I was a masterpiece. He observed me in silence, hesitant to raise his voice and disrupt the fragile atmosphere. I rose to my feet, not to bring it to a close. Yet it was the necessity of breath that compelled me. He trailed behind, maintaining a careful distance. It was sufficient to heighten my consciousness of the distance that lay between us. I glanced back at him. The sunlight filtered through the foliage, creating a mosaic of warmth upon his features. Our gazes intertwined. Silence reigned supreme. Yet I sensed it, that if I allowed him, he would caress me as though I were a cherished secret, too precious to hurry. Yet I remained still. Nor did he. He departed shortly thereafter. Expressed gratitude. Wished me to savor the remainder of my day. I observed him as he strolled down the driveway, his hand brushing against the hedge's top, as if seeking something to ground him. As he rounded the bend, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I had transcended the role of merely being Peter Langley's wife. I was known as Claire. Noted. Yearned for. Recalled. And the way Julian gazed at me, I sensed that he still had more to say. I wasn't either. Peter returned home on Sunday evening. He let his suitcase fall to the floor in the hallway, grazed my cheek with a familiar kiss, inquired about our dinner choices. He failed to inquire about my weekend. I didn't inquire about whether I missed him. I failed to perceive the altered stillness that enveloped the house. Yet Julian would have. Perhaps that was the deepest wound of all. I convinced myself that this was the final chapter. What transpired on the patio, the glance, the intensity shared between us, was merely a fleeting spark, a gentle thrum, an exquisite foolish blunder. Yet it was not. He returned on Tuesday. Peter found himself seated in a meeting. Julian rapped on the door, a towering stack of books cradled in his arms. I neglected to bring these back, he remarked. I thought it served as a reasonable justification. I ought to have asked him to go. Instead, I pushed the door open wider. We chose not to visit the study. We lingered in the kitchen. I prepared a fragrant cup of tea. He positioned himself opposite me at the counter. I reassured myself that it was merely tea, merely returning some books. Yet, the quiet that lingered between us spoke volumes. Our hands converged on the spoon simultaneously. His fingers grazed against mine. It was no mere coincidence. This time it's different. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. Not from a place of fear. Yet, there was a moment when something within me crumbled. As if a barrier that had withstood the test of time finally gave way. He remained close. I didn't. Either. Our hands lingered, fingers brushing softly, gazes entwined. He gazed at me as a man gazes at the one desire he has sworn to resist, yet yearns for all the same. Perhaps I ought to have taken a step back. Perhaps I ought to have brushed it aside with a chuckle. Yet I refrained, because I was weary of remaining unacknowledged. Invisible. He advanced a step nearer. A decisive move that conveys a clear message. Hesitate now and I will be aware of it. I remained still. His hand extended toward mine once more deliberately this time. His thumb glided softly along the delicate skin of my wrist. And I swear to the heavens my knees nearly buckled beneath me. That delicate caress, soft, quivering, respectful, was more than mere flesh meeting flesh. It encompassed all that I had longed for. Each unspoken word from Peter. Each look he failed to bestow. Each pain I had concealed under the weight of years filled with obligation, monotony, and quietude. I gazed up at Julian. His gaze was already fixed upon me. There was no smile. There was a subtle, poignant look in his eyes, as if he grappled with the uncertainty of whether he was leading me to ruin or to salvation. Perhaps a combination of the two. I ought to take my leave, he remarked. Yet he remained still. I didn't either. The clock's ticking resonated with an almost exaggerated intensity. The tea lost its warmth. The volumes remained piled upon the table. We remained there, his thumb gently grazing my wrist, my heart racing in areas I believed had long since lost feeling. At last I murmured, "Julian." He tilted his head slightly, a soft gesture of disbelief. There's no need for words. Yet we remained steadfast, bound together by a singular point of contact. Through all the unspoken words between us, he departed just a few minutes afterward. Yet, just before stepping out, they paused at the threshold and remarked, "I look forward to our next encounter. Claire." Certainly not Mrs. Langley. Claire. Only I. As the door clicked shut behind him, a sense of guilt did not wash over me. A surge of vitality coursed through me. In a sense, it posed an even greater threat. That weekend, Peter found himself attending yet another conference. Chicago once again. From Friday to Sunday. He hardly lifted his gaze from the screen of his laptop while he packed. With practiced hands, I folded his shirts just as he preferred and carefully placed them in his suitcase. "Don't wait up," he murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to the crown of my head. Avoiding the gaze of my eyes. "I will feel utterly drained upon my arrival." I smiled as I always had. He shut the door firmly behind him. After that, I lingered in the stillness for what felt like an eternity. Absence of thought. Simply experiencing. A few hours later, Julian sent a text. "Is solitude your companion this evening?" I held off on responding immediately. I strolled over to the window. The sky was dissolving into a rich, velvety blue. The sort that imbues the world with a sense of languor and latent peril. I composed my thoughts in written form. Indeed. Silence lingered in the air. Yet, just 20 minutes later he rapped on the door. I unsealed it with unwavering resolve. He remained silent. I didn't either. A new kind of silence enveloped us now. One that sought not for approval, merely for existence. He strode in as if he were meant to be there. As if the very atmosphere had been molded to accommodate his presence. I filled a glass with wine. He shed his jacket, pushing up his sleeves with determination. And for a fleeting moment we simply stood in the kitchen, facing one another, like two souls on the brink of an act that both understood would lead to their undoing. Yet it's impossible to resist. "I don't want to be a regret for you," he murmured softly. I advanced, taking a single step forward. "I've grown weary of existing as if I am invisible." And that was the end of it. He traversed the space that lay between us not in haste, but with a sense of honor. His hands enveloped my face with a gentle warmth. Our foreheads touched gently, a soft connection between us. Time seemed to stretch unhurried and calm. Merely gravity and pain, and this overwhelming softness that I hadn't experienced in years. His kiss was not one of possession. It was meticulous. It was as if he comprehended every shattered piece of my being, yearning to revive each one with a gentle kiss. We refrained from entering the bedroom. We lingered in the living room, on the couch that had borne witness to countless solitary evenings. Garments slipped away gradually, like chapters in a novel we hesitated to unfold. His body quivered against mine, not out of fear, but from the weight of holding back. From a place of deep respect, I allowed him to catch a glimpse of me, every part of me. Each line tells a story. Each mark tells a story. Every facet of a woman who had lingered too long in the obscurity of another's presence. And he revered me as if I were an epiphany. In the aftermath, we found ourselves entwined in a quiet embrace. My head rests gently upon his chest. His fingers glided in gentle circles across my back. There were no commitments given. There are no envisioned possibilities ahead. Yet, within that silence, there lay a profound sanctity. It's more than mere desire. Not even affection. Yet acknowledgement. I have no idea what this is, I murmured. He inclined his head in agreement. I don't either. Yet, we were both aware that this was not the end. For when another gazes upon you in that way, not merely desiring you but truly perceiving you, one cannot simply act as though it never occurred. Rest eludes you and slumber slips away. Spring arrived in a swift embrace. And thus the conclusion of the semester arrives. Julian handed in his final thesis the week following that night. Peter lauded it. He remarked that it was among the most exceptional pieces of writing he had ever overseen. In the faculty lounge they exchanged a firm handshake. Peter radiated with pride. Julian hushed, serene. Not a single glance was cast in my direction. Not at the dinner we held to commemorate the occasion. Not amidst the laughter and the cheerful clinking of glasses in our living room. He maintained his separation. And I grasped the essence. For once you step over such a boundary, it becomes a part of you eternally. Yet, you choose to keep it understated. You protect it, as if marked by a divine touch. A week later, he departed from the town. Secured a fellowship in New York. Peter felt a swell of pride naturally. A smile crept across my face as he shared the news. Expressed everything perfectly. Yet, in the solitude that enveloped me once more, within the quiet of that all-too-familiar kitchen, I finally permitted myself to mourn. Not for the sake of a relationship's demise, yet for that part of me that had stirred to life, and found themselves devoid of a mirror. Julian left without a word of farewell, not through language. Yet, I discovered something hidden within one of the volumes he had returned. A scrawled message, just a fragment of thought. You have reminded me that some beauty endures. Some simply overlook that it's permitted to radiate. There is no signature. No adjustments required. The note remains with me. Concealed within the pages of a book, I am certain Peter will never open. Occasionally, in the stillness of the night, I find myself opening it. Not to revisit it. Yet, to recall that for a fleeting and quivering moment, I was not unseen. I was observed. Yearned for. Caressed as if I were still composed of flames. Peter continues to impart knowledge. Continues to recite Shakespeare during dinner conversations. He still kisses my cheek as if it's just another item to tick off his list. And I continue to fold his shirts. Continue to embody the character. Yet a shift has occurred. Not at first glance. Within. A subtle rebellion. A recollection resonating within me. Julian is gone from my life forever. Perhaps that's for the best. Yet on certain nights when the wind sweeps through the garden with a wild fervor, or I glimpse the fleeting glint of those deep, contemplative eyes in a stranger passing by, I sense it once more. The intensity of that heat. The pain lingers. Such an unattainable softness. Some individuals drift through your existence like the changing seasons. Yet there are those who, they resonate within you endlessly. Regardless of the duration of the silence, the memory of their embrace lingers. etched in your mind forever.